You're sitting across from someone you love, and something they just said landed wrong. Maybe it was small, a joke that stung, a comment that felt careless. And instead of saying that hurt, you feel your whole body go still. Your face doesn't change. Your voice doesn't rise. You just stop. You answer in shorter sentences. You nod along. And on the outside, it looks like nothing happened at all. But inside, something is loud. You're replaying the moment, feeling the sting, maybe even feeling tears building behind your eyes, and you're doing everything you can to make sure none of it shows. Later, the other person might ask, "Are you okay?" You got quiet, and you say, "I'm fine." And in that moment, you almost believe it yourself because going quiet has become so automatic that it doesn't even feel like a choice anymore. It feels like just what happens when you're hurt. If that sounds familiar, you're not broken and you're not being dramatic by noticing it. This is a real and surprisingly common pattern, and it has a name in psychology, even if you've never heard the clinical version of it. Some call it emotional withdrawal. Others call it shutting down or going internal. Whatever label you put on it, the shape is the same. Pain arrives, and instead of showing it outward, you fold it inward. You get quieter, more distant, more controlled. You might physically leave the room, or you might stay in the room, but disappear anyway, present in body, but somewhere else entirely in mind. And here's the important part before we go any further. This makes complete sense. It's not a character flaw. It's not you being too sensitive or too closed off. It's a pattern that got built for a reason, and once you understand that reason, it stops feeling like a mystery and starts feeling like something you can actually work with. So let's talk about where this comes from, because it rarely starts in adulthood. Most people who go quiet when they're hurt learn to do a long time ago, often in childhood, often without anyone meaning to teach it to them. Think about a kid who cries and gets told to stop crying, or told they're being too much, or told that their feelings are inconvenient for whoever's in the room. That kid learns something very quickly. Showing pain doesn't get comfort. It gets a bigger problem. Maybe a parent got irritated when emotions came up. Maybe a household ran on tension, where any sign of vulnerability could tip things into an argument or into someone shutting down even harder than the child did. Maybe love in that house was conditional on being easy, being calm, being no trouble at all. In psychology, this is often connected to something called emotional attunement, which is really just a fancy way of describing whether the people raising you noticed and responded to what you were feeling. When attunement is missing, when a child's sadness or fear or anger gets ignored, dismissed, or punished, the child doesn't stop feeling those things. They just stop showing them. The nervous system adapts. It learns that silence is safer than expression. And because this learning happens so early, before language, before logic, it doesn't get stored as a memory you can point to. It gets stored as a reflex. There's another piece to this too, and it's about control. When you're a kid and your environment feels unpredictable, being quiet is one of the only things you can actually control. You can't control whether your parents fight. You can't control whether someone yells or leaves or dismisses you, but you can control your own face. You can control your own voice. Going quiet becomes a kind of armor, a way to protect the one thing that still belongs to you, which is your inner world. And here's the part that explains why this follows people into adulthood so persistently. The nervous system doesn't automatically know the danger has passed. If shutting down kept you safe once, your body will keep reaching for that same tool decades later, even in relationships where the other person genuinely wants to hear how you feel. This is sometimes described as the difference between what's happening and what your body believes is happening. Logically, as an adult, you might know this friend or partner isn't going to punish you for being upset, but your body learned its lesson somewhere else a long time ago, and bodies are slow to update. Now let's make this less abstract, because this pattern doesn't just show up in big dramatic moments. It shows up in the small, everyday ones, and once you start noticing it, you'll probably see it everywhere. Picture a couple having dinner. One person makes an offhand comment that feels dismissive. Instead of saying, "That hurt my feelings," the other person just goes quiet, picks at their food, gives one-word answers for the rest of the meal, and when asked what's wrong, says nothing. That's the pattern in a relationship. Or picture a coworker in a meeting whose idea gets talked over. Instead of pushing back or saying it bothered them, they just stopped contributing for the rest of the meeting, nodding along to everyone else's points while quietly deciding they'll never bring up an idea in that room again. That's the pattern at work. Or think about a friendship where someone cancels plans last minute, again, and instead of saying, "I feel hurt when this happens," the other friend just stops initiating plans altogether, slowly pulling away without ever naming why, until one day the friendship has quietly dissolved and nobody can point to the exact moment it happened. And then there's the version that happens entirely inside someone's own head, where they get hurt by something someone said days ago, never mention it, but replay it constantly, building an entire private case against that person while presenting a completely calm face to them every single day. In every one of these examples, the outside looks fine, composed even, but underneath, there's a whole storm that nobody else gets access to. Here's what makes this pattern so quietly costly, and it's important to sit with this for a second instead of rushing past it. Every time you go quiet instead of speaking your hurt, you're not making the feeling disappear. You're just relocating it. It doesn't evaporate because you didn't say it out loud. It goes somewhere, usually inward, where it accumulates. Over time, this creates a kind of emotional backlog, a stack of unspoken hurts that never got resolved because they were never voiced in the first place. And this backlog does two damaging things. First, it teaches the people around you the wrong lesson. If you never show that something hurt you, the people in your life have no way of knowing they need to change anything, because from their side, everything looked fine. So the same hurtful pattern repeats, not because they don't care, but because they were never actually shown there was a problem. Second, and this is the part people often miss, the backlog changes your relationship with yourself. When you consistently override your own hurt in order to keep the peace or stay in control, you start to send yourself a message that your feelings aren't important enough to voice. Over years, this can quietly erode self-trust and self-worth. Not through one big moment, but through thousands of small ones where you chose silence over honesty, even with people who might have actually listened if you'd given them a chance. And there's a physical cost too. Chronic emotional suppression has been linked to increased stress in the body, because holding something in actually takes energy. It's not neutral. It's not free. Your body registers unexpressed emotion the same way it registers unresolved tension. And over time, that tension has to go somewhere, whether that's fatigue, irritability, or just a persistent low-level exhaustion that doesn't seem to have a clear cause. But here's the shift, and this is the part worth staying for, because understanding a pattern is not the same as being stuck with it forever. The fact that you can now name this, that you can look at a moment where you went quiet and say, "Oh, that's the pattern," that's not just me being distant. That's a learned response protecting an old version of me. That awareness is genuinely the turning point. You're not trying to become a different person overnight. You're not trying to suddenly become someone who announces every feeling the second it happens. That's not realistic, and honestly, it's not even the goal. The goal is smaller and more achievable than that. The goal is to slowly teach your nervous system a new piece of information, that expressing hurt, at least with the right people, does not lead to the same danger it used to. Every single time you choose to say even a small piece of what you're actually feeling, instead of retreating into silence, you're giving your body new evidence. You're updating an old file. And that update doesn't happen all at once. It happens one moment at a time, one slightly uncomfortable sentence at a time, which is honestly a relief because it means you don't need a dramatic breakthrough. You just need practice. So here's something concrete you can actually use. The next time you feel yourself starting to go quiet, that familiar pull to shrink, to answer in one word, to disappear behind a calm face, try pausing and asking yourself one simple question. What would it sound like if I said even 10% of what I'm actually feeling right now? Not the full, raw, unfiltered version. Just a small, honest piece of it. Something like that comment actually stung a little, or I think I need a minute. Something about that bothered me. You don't have to overhaul the whole conversation. You just have to interrupt the automatic reflex with one small act of honesty. That's it. That's the whole shift. Because the goal was never to stop being a private person or to stop valuing calm. The goal is to stop mistaking silence for safety when really silence was just the best tool you had access to at a time when you didn't have any other options. You have other options now. And every time you use one, even just a little, you're proving to yourself that being honest about your hurt doesn't have to cost you the very connection you were trying to protect in the first place.